Welcome back to another edition of Soundbites for Immigration Success. We're happy to have you with us today. I'm happy to have with us Kim Casey Lee. How are you, Kim?
Very good. Thank you, Monica.
We bring this series to you so you can get to know your fellow consultant, hear their story and journey, hear some of their challenges and how they've tackled them, and their final piece of takeaway advice. Kim, the first question I have for you is, well, tell us a little bit about yourself, about who you are and sort of where you're from, and what inspired you, or what was your segue into the immigration field?
Hey, well, who I am, I'm Kim Casey Lee. I always have to make sure the Casey is in my name because there are several Kim Lees out there that are in a profession that is less desired. And so I don't want to be mistaken for that. And also, the Casey is an homage to my dad. My dad gave me that name. And here comes my story. The reason why I got Kim as my first name is because when we first came to Canada in 79 as the last of the boat people, the sponsors, or not the sponsors, but the people registering our name in the refugee camp that we were in didn't know kin was a name. And so my dad, not being able to speak English, had asked, "What is your daughter's name?" And he says, Kin Chi, which is where the KC is. And they put me down as Kim. And then going forward, I was always called Kim. But really, my real name is Kin Chi Lee.
Wow, I don't think I ever knew that quite so in detail. I knew the story about being amongst the last of the boat people. That's very interesting. So your family immigrated in '79, and so you've experienced that immigration journey of starting in a new land and your family having to build up. So I guess in a sense, you can relate to your clients in some sense of no matter the field or pathway that they come, that it is a difficult journey, sort of leaving your homeland behind and coming to Canada.
Well, I came when I was very young, so I I mean, short of having little bits and pieces of traumatic events that happened, not because it was traumatic in a negative way, but traumatic in a sense that it was a complete culture shock being in a country I've never been, I was not raised, I was not born in, and exposed to things that were different in my culture. It I can relate in terms of the challenges that my clients would come here to establish because I've seen my parents face those challenges. But me personally, I probably could not relate at a personal level, meaning how did I struggle as a kid growing up as an immigrant? Because I was 5 when I arrived, and really you could say that I was raised and almost born in this country. Just the simple fact that my first language though is Cantonese, I'm more comfortable speaking English than I am my native language. And I only speak my native language because my parents, um, one, instilled in us the importance of knowing our original language because it tells us where we're from and reminds us where we're from. But also it reinforces that we still keep our Cantonese line or our Chinese ways alive, even though we're in Western society.
And do you think for maybe not so much, I know you have a big corporate base, but would you say part of that is still important for a lot of new immigrants coming today, that they still retain some of those cultural ties and experiences as they settle in Canada?
1000%. And remember, I might have a huge corporate base, but at the end of the day, I'm still dealing with human beings, right? I'm still dealing with immigrants. I might be bringing them for the benefit of a corporation, but each individual client has their own individual story and has their own individual case, and therefore has their own cultural background that they bring with them. I call it cultural baggage, but not in a negative way. They have their own cultural parcel that they bring with them. And it's really important, I think, being in a country that is multicultural and so diversified, that they bring in this culture of theirs because it then opens up our ability to see other parts of this world without really leaving this world. So I think it's important that everyone keeps their cultural roots, but at the same time, I think it's also very important that they acclimate to their environment because no matter what, they are coming to a country that has certain established values. And so they should, when you come to a different country, you should also merge those ideas rather than just being very exclusive to say, this is what I came with and this is how I'm going to be. If that were the case, then really why come to another country other than if, for economic gain?
So I know this is a little bit of a segue. So as you say, you might be bringing a whole bunch of clients for a corporate client, but do you ever get down into the weeds with your clients where you ever have to have that conversation where your clients come to you and ask about what to expect? Do you ever have that conversation about you have to sort of, it's a new country and you have to be ready to see what's in front of you?
I don't necessarily have that conversation with them, but I do give them awareness of what they're getting into because they don't normally ask, right? Like most of the people that do come from my corporate practice is they come here because they have a job offer. They come here because they're working. Um, and they come here because they see an economic benefit to coming here. So we don't necessarily talk about, well, when you're here, be aware that this is what happens. That's what I educate employers on. I always explain to them, look, there are people coming in that are not culturally aware of Western working and Western environments. And so I encourage employers to get that cultural training or cultural awareness of training so that they could retain their workers. But when I'm speaking to my clients, and I prep every single one of them before they show up at the border, um, I prepare them and we have a conversation to say, are you aware this is like, for example, it's winter right now. For people that are coming in from the Philippines, they might know the concept of winter, but they've never seen winter. And so I would explain to them, especially, when they bring their children with them, I would explain to them to say, look, this is what winter is. This is how cold it is. Imagine yourself being in a fridge, like go in there. Maybe you can experience how it feels to be cold in that sense, but it's all around you. It's not just, everywhere you go, it's cold in the winter. And so in that way, I give them that knowledge, but I don't really sit down and say, listen, here's how it's going to be. I'm going to break it down for you.
So I guess this brings me to the next question. You've got a lot of experience. I know you've been in the industry, I think over 25 years or reaching 25 years. And you have your own practice now, but it didn't start off that way. Tell us a little bit about your early years and how you sort of migrated to where you are now, if you don't mind
So
sharing that a little bit.
I'll completely age myself when I say this, and I'm okay with it because I think age is just a number, and just the older you are, the wiser you are. And so, I started when I was 18. That's how long I've been in this industry, and I might not look older than what you think I am, but I've just hit my 50th this year. And so, but when I started out at 18 as a receptionist, and it was really purely by mistake. It was just a lawyer kept going to my dad and saying, "I need someone who can speak both Cantonese and English really fluently because I have a huge Chinese community base." So begged my dad to allow me to work for him. And so one summer I did. And then since then, I started as a receptionist and I progressed really well and never really had an interest in it. I was still thinking that I wanted to be a corporate lawyer. Um, but over the years, after 4 years being with him and progressing and doing really well, and then becoming, at that time, consultants were not regulated yet. And so became the senior consultant, I began to really have this passion to help people, but in a different sense, not in the sense that I'm helping them now. I think in my younger years, it was more at a very naive approach to the practice. Um, and then from that law firm, I then went to another law firm, a competing law firm that really needed help and was making me one of their 1/3 partners. So I went there, and then eventually, after 5 years or so, we were recruited. My partner and I at that time, who was an immigration lawyer in both U.S. and Canada, him and I were recruited uh, to come to London by another big law firm that was looking to expand their product offerings, their service offerings to include immigration law. And so again, ended up coming to this law firm and then was with them for, I think, 12 years as their senior immigration manager. But then after a while, I was beginning to see the distinction between a non-lawyer and a lawyer in a legal environment. It was very hard because I was an anomaly. I couldn't fit anywhere. I couldn't fit to be one of the secretaries because I wasn't. I couldn't fit to be a clerk because I was not. I couldn't fit to be a lawyer because I'm not. And so eventually it just came to such a struggle that I thought, and then on top of that, we had a class action practice. And so, or the firm that I was with was a huge class action, and they kept wanting to sue, and we would always get conflicted out with certain clients that we wanted to take on. So for me, it didn't make sense to stay. And I said to my partner at that time, listen, I'm going to go out on my own. I don't want to be with the firm anymore. I don't think it's I don't think it's beneficial to me. And so the lawyer partner that I was with in that department at that time said, well, I'm not going to stay here without you. So why don't we go out and do our own thing? And so we did. So him and I both came out and did our own thing. And of course, after 9 months, I realized his own thing was different from my own thing. And I was still being stuck in that. I don't want to say exploitation because that would then make me vulnerable. And I wasn't. It was more of we just weren't aligned with where our business goals were. And so I finally then decided, you know what, enough of me working for lawyers and having them benefit from my skill. I'm going to come out and do my own thing because it just didn't make sense anymore. And so I broke out and here I am. Like what, 30 years later, 32 years later.
So it goes to show that paths are they're not straight, like they take these winding roads, and sometimes opportunities fall in your lap and sometimes you have to seize them. So for you, you always had an employer, and you didn't have to worry about a paycheck because a paycheck came in, and now you're responsible for a business and you employ people. So it's a whole new set of skills.
Well, okay. So for sure, the path was never set for me to be an immigration law consultant, like to be an RCIC. Never in my life did I ever envision that I would be here. I definitely had, because you know what? To be quite frank, RCICs never existed in the time that we were in this industry, right? So in a sense, you don't go to school. There was never programs, there were never schools, there was never a promotion of our field as it is being promoted now. So you don't grow up and say, well, when I grow up, I want to be an immigration consultant. I sound like someone that I really hate who said this. But now in the past 10 years, you're smiling because you know who I'm talking about. In the past 10 years, it's evolved to become a profession that people can say, well, I want to be I want to be this professional. And so for sure, my path was never the way that I expected. And just to go back a little, you said that, I went from being an employee paycheck to paycheck to now being my own boss. In a particular period of time when I was recruited into the big firm in London, I was not doing I didn't get a paycheck. It was based purely on performance. And that's the reason why I was so different. And I was that anomaly. No one could ever put me anywhere in that law firm because an employee would get paid, a lawyer would earn their keep. So I was kind of a non-lawyer earning my keep by making my own practice within the firm. So this is where that constant struggle was. And so, no, there were some periods in my life where I didn't live on a paycheck. I actually had to grind and make my own money.
So you really had to work your butt off. You had to really work
Oh,
hard.
for sure. And I think I did it willingly, obviously. It's always good to go in hungry because for someone who who doesn't mind working hard and who has work ethics, to be hungry is the best way to be because you're always going to work hard to get it. And that's how you become successful is just working hard and being committed to what you want.
So one of the questions I had sent you in advance was sort of what was the biggest challenge, but I think you've sort of spoken to that just in your conversation here and just evolving to where you are now and dealing with those potholes, and I don't even want to call them roadblocks because you've turned them into opportunities, really.
Yeah, I can't say that there's only one challenge, right? Like I think throughout your path, your career path, you're always going to come across challenges. It's what I call the fork on the road. And it's how you want to manage that fork. There's no right way or wrong way. Like when I was younger, the challenge I could have had was gaining more knowledge. And so how do I do that? I go and try to find as much information as I can on my own or rely on my mentors and beg them to let me take on cases that they didn't think that I could take on and prove myself in that sense. That was a challenge. Once that was overcome, then the next challenge is in life. What do I want to be? Do I want to be a career woman, or do I want to be a wife, or do I want to be a mother, and so on and so forth? Now, and then of course, at the prime of your career, you're like, okay, my challenge is now juggling between my career and my family, which is more. My current challenge now is it's a good challenge, but it's a challenge of, can I let go now? And am I ready to let go? Because having been in here for 32 years in this field, which I still truly love, and that's the reason why I always try to give back as much as I can. Um, my challenge is how do I let go but still be connected? Because in our industry, in order for you to be able to really teach and mentor and give back, you have to actually still be practicing. Otherwise, you're only giving back at a theoretical level, which is not what I want. When I give back to RCICs that are new in the industry, or even to my students at Queen's, I want to give back at a level that I've practiced it. I know exactly what it is, as opposed to something that you can learn in a textbook. Because anyone can learn in a textbook. If you have a brain cell in your brain, you can learn. It's just how hard you will study. But in practice, you don't learn that. You need to experience it. You actually have to feel it, you know?
So yeah, so that I do I know that because I've lived that, having been mentored and knowing the theory, but when you see it in practice, oh, okay, that's the way it works. And
Mhm.
the theory says one thing, but it doesn't always talk about all the hiccups. It doesn't take into
Yeah.
account the intangibles. So I guess,
Yep.
Kim, my next question to you is then what kind of advice do you have for your students then at Queen's as they're getting ready to write their EP exam, or maybe they've just passed and they're just starting off? What advice do you have for them?
So one of the things I always try to tell all my students, and even new RCIC that I may not have ever that I've never come across as one of my students, or anyone that's ever gone through the Queen's program, new RCICs that have come from different outfits. One of the things I always give the advice on is, don't look at this industry as a job, but look at it as a profession. The difference is, as a profession, you can be proud. As a profession, you can ensure that you will always practice with integrity and you will have high regard for the industry. As a job, you're just doing the job to earn a paycheck. And so there's no, yes, the reward is that you get a monetary gain at the end, but you'll never get that satisfaction of actually upholding a profession that you should be proud of. And really truly helping people along the way as you're making money. So my advice is always to never diminish the fact that you are in a profession that should be highly regarded. Not It's not just a space for lawyers, it is a space for immigration law practitioners who are competent, who are professionals, who practice with integrity. And the ultimate goal is, you want to maintain that. You want to uphold that professionalism and that standard.
Lots to unpack there. I've written it down because lots of good words to hashtag. So I really love what you said. That you're absolutely right, and we've we've worked really hard, and you've been amongst those who've worked really hard to bring credibility and professionalism. We're it's been many years in the making, and we're as an industry, I think we're very very proud to where we've gotten to, and we know there's still more work to do, and we want to empower that next generation to have that same sort of pride.
Yeah.
So Kim, you talk about being in the field for more than 30 years now, starting from the days of answering the phones and of
Before
making
computers.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what? I can totally relate because that's what I did out of university when I was working for my mom and all the mistakes that I did back in the day. So has it all been worth it? Are you glad that you ended up where you are today?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. If I didn't, I wouldn't be here. I would have been done after the first stint with the law firm. I'd be like, no way, you're not going to use me that way. I'm going to go to law school and I'll use someone else in return. Um, no, it's so worth it. It's so, even I want to say, even during, and maybe it's because I was part of that fight to make us a credible profession, is why I think it's so worth it, and to see the progress we've made. Um, no, for sure. I don't have any regrets. And that's one thing. I never look back and I never regret. I think from the moment I decided that I no longer want to be part of what I call, playing second fiddle. There's another name I want to say, but I don't want to because it would be politically incorrect to say it. But I don't want to be considered a second class citizen in this industry anymore. And so since that moment on, I've decided that no, there's no turning back. I love what I do. I wouldn't do anything else other than my side gigs that I do for fun. I would never do anything else because this is definitely my passion. This is my field. And I even talk about it when my husband talks about, retirement. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll retire, but immigration is my it's part of my bloodline. It's in my DNA. Even if I do retire, I'm still going to be consulting at one point in time or mentoring, or I would still be reading my case law every Sunday, um, because this is me. Like Kim without immigration is no longer Kim, is just mom or something. It's hard for me to explain the passion I have in this field. And I think this is also the reason why I'm so passionate when I try to teach students and when I talk to other RCICs. Most of them just think that, like, what the hell? Like, what's wrong with you? But it's because I have such a love affair for this industry. I just love it.
Yeah. Well, you've come full circle. Kimchi, as Kim Lee has really made her mark. Thank you,
Ah,
Kim. I am
thank
so
you.
glad we made the trip to Cuba.
And back
Yeah.
alive.
Um, I want to thank you, all of you in your audience today, for being part of this conversation and listening to Kim's story and to hear her passion. And we hope you take some of that passion back to your practice or to your field in whatever you choose to do as an immigration consultant. Kim, any final words that you have?
No, I just say, look, learn the history of our profession so that you can be super proud of where you are now and understand the struggles that those who got us to where we are, and help us uphold that, help us continue that legacy and make it into a profession so that when our children grow up, they're going to say, yeah, one day I want to aspire to be an immigration law consultant, just like my mom or just like my dad or just like the person that helped me come to this country.
Final great words to end this podcast. Thank you, Kim. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Pleasure's all mine.
Take care. We'll see you soon.